So in this part of the video, we're going to discuss tyres, another thing that you should definitely check before riding your bike. It takes 2 seconds to check a tyre. We're going to be looking at tread depth, the minimum tread depths, how you can tell if your riding is affecting how your tyre is wearing, which is quite important. We're also going to look for any lumps and bumps on the tyre, tyre pressures, and anything else that can cause your bike to act incorrectly when you're riding. Essential checks you must make on your bike before you go out for a ride is just to quickly check the tyre. What you're looking for is just a basic overview, see if there's any lumps or bumps that shouldn't be there. It generally happens with older tyres that are over a year, 2 years old. If it's going to happen, they'll be old. What you also need to check, just wind the tyre back. If you've got a centre stand, it's a lot easier. You can just turn the wheel, exactly the same with the rear. If you haven't got a centre stand, check the tyre and then move the bike forward on the stand and then check the tyre that was beneath the mudguard. The other thing is tyre tread depth, which is the most essential thing. Tyre tread depth can affect braking, especially in the wet, aquaplaning, which is incredibly dangerous. The UK minimum tyre tread depth is 1 millimetre over 3/4 of the tyre. So the 3/4 of the tyre must be at least 1 millimetre deep in tread. If it isn't, you need to change the tyres. Now, most people may not have a tread depth gauge in the garage. What you can do is a 20p test. Effectively, it's 1 millimetre on motorcycle tyres, but it's 1.6 millimetre on cars. So motorcycles can run less tread. The 20p test is the edge of the 20p is 1.6 millimetre deep. So you can add that into the groove of the tyre and make sure that that is below the depth of the tyre tread. If it's below, you've got at least 1.6 millimetre of meat on the tyre left. If it's above, you need to change your tyres or look at changing them. As I say, it's 1.6 millimetre with the 20p, but it's only a millimetre that's needed for the bike. So it's an emergency test just to be sure, effectively. Failing that, just go around the tyre, make sure the tread's all good, make sure there's no nails or screws or anything that you might have picked up. If there is, I always recommend replacing the tyre and not fixing the tyre. A motorcycle is a much more finite machine. You want it to perform every time. A car can get away with a replacement bung put in if there's been a screw in the tyre. A motorcycle, I would say, because you've only got 2 wheels, replace that tyre. So another essential check that should be made on the bike, I often do this about probably once a week, is the tyre pressures. Ways of noticing if you've got low tyre pressure and you haven't got a tyre pressure gauge. If the steering of the bike becomes a bit stiffer and almost a bit sort of blobby in the corners, so that it feels as though it's gripping a bit much and it's not giving you that nice loose feeling. With spoked wheels, it's worth checking the pressures more often than mag wheels. This is why you'll find that high-end sports bikes that do 150 plus miles an hour, they're all mag wheels. Bikes that are lower down than that will use spokes generally. There's an argument for which is better and which is worse, but spoke wheels generally need checking more because spokes become looser, tyre pressures lose a bit of pressure that way. So if you're out and your steering becomes a bit heavy, you get to a petrol station, you can check your pressure. Obviously you have to put some money in the machine generally these days. You check the pressure. If you don't know what your tyre pressure is, you can run 28 to 30 psi front and rear on all of our bikes and scooters as an interim till you get home, and then check in the book, or indeed we'll put in the description below this video the actual tyre pressures for all of our models, and then you can release a bit of pressure or go back and add a bit more pressure. I will say for your garage it's worth investing in a little tyre pressure gauge. They're only a few quid and it means that once a week you can just pop it on the end of the valve. It'll tell you exactly how much pressure's in there, you know whether you're good to go or not. Tyre pressure, again, low pressure causes very stiff handling. It can cause slippage in the wet. It can cause all sorts of road problems, and I've noticed in my lifetime anyway that low pressure on tyres, you tend to pick up more gravel and dirt and bits that stick into the tyre because there's more of the tyre in contact with the road surface. Also, what I will say, I've got a sample here of a tyre that has been consistently run at low pressure. Now, as you can see on the tyre, the outsides are still well within legal tread depth. You might even say that 3/4 of this tyre is within legal tread depth and therefore is legal. It's not the case at all. The centre section has worn away so badly that the tyre is squared off, and this is from low pressure. This can also be due to the fact that when you're riding, if you don't corner and lean into corners, the tyre will square off a lot quicker. So you end up not using any of the corners where you would normally be leaning, and all you're doing is using the centre, so the tyre will wear down a lot faster. That's flatness, and that is if you're driving in straight lines a lot and you don't sort of lean with the bike in the corners and instead just turn the handlebars. This tyre is extremely dangerous. As you can see, if you're running on this and you go through water, the chances are the water is not going to be able to disperse from underneath this centre section to get out to the outer sections and disperse away from the tyre. You risk aquaplaning, you risk crashing. It's not the best way to go. If this tyre had another 5 to 10 PSI in it, it would have also lasted probably another year. So it's also financially very, very beneficial. Not to mention miles per gallon. If a tyre is incorrectly inflated, miles per gallon is drastically affected. So this is an example of a brand new tyre. A little bit about the tyre. They've often got these knobbles on which will wear off over time. This is a Michelin City Pro, which is a very good tyre. The markings on the tyre are very important. The markings on this one, which are here, I don't know if you can see on the camera, they say 90, 90, 18. Effectively what that means is that it's an 18-inch wheel, it's got a 90mm side section, and it's got a 90mm cross section on the tyre. If it's a 120, 70, it would have a 70mm side section, a 120 cross section. The idea being with this particular tyre, as you can see the central groove, water dispersal is key. As you drive through water, heavy rain, it will get into the centre groove, move round the centre groove, incredibly fast obviously, and then disperse out of the channels. If it can't disperse, your tyre and the tarmac are not in contact with each other, and instead you're in contact with water, and that is when you aquaplane. So the idea of a decent wet tyre, like this would be good for all occasions for your average sort of bike, is to disperse water as fast as possible. The softer the tyre is, the less time it will last, but the more grip you will also have in the dry.